How does Zombies in Spaceland play in 2022 when compared to nearly half a decade ago when the map first launched? Well, I think that answer is a bit complicated. Spaceland is flushed with unique gameplay systems that revolutionized other iterations of Zombies moving forward, which is always beautiful to see. But then there are some other issues that are much more subtle that make the pacing, the difficulty, and traversal just downright unenjoyable. And I can't help but think if this entire team of Zombies devs had a second chance at Infinite Warfare Zombies, a lot of these issues would have been ironed out, as a lot of them had been in the maps that followed. Zombies in Spaceland is a prime example of why we need other developers working on this mode. Treyarch are the GOATs, no doubt, and I would never deny that, but Infinity Ward showed up ready to play ball, and goddamn did they leave a hell of a first impression. And this was just the first map out of the entire DLC season. The only way for Infinity Ward to go was up, and if you were around back then, well, you already know the story. Before we dive into the issues I have with this map, I want to first shower it with some well-deserved praise. This map is unapologetically 80s and in the best ways possible, and I know a lot of people say similar things about Cold War Zombies and I guess just Cold War in general, but Spaceland is the American 80s lifestyle and aesthetic distilled into Zombies form, and it's just perfection. The outfits the characters are wearing, the neon lights covering the theme park, the roller coaster, the clowns, the arcade. Oh my God, that arcade. It's just absolutely amazing. And most of you already watching know that I'm 600 years old and I grew up in the 90s and I'm a boomer millennial, and these arcades, they weren't entirely out of style yet, so I did get to experience them to a certain degree. So for the first time when I played Spaceland all those years ago, I was literally transported back in time, and I could smell the smells of popcorn in the arcade and the junk food and the feeling of shoes sticking to that dirty carpet that's like paper thin over concrete, the way that we played skee ball to like try and get tickets to only realize that it was 25,000 tickets for a PlayStation 1. Times were simpler back then, and I really do miss them. It was just magical being able to feel that nostalgia in a different way than what COD usually presents. And all right, that's enough of me going down memory lane. I just really wanted to highlight how good of a job Lee Ross and his crew made Spaceland feel just like a real place, and not even representatively, but Spaceland is a place that you would want to go. It's a place where a lot of us have almost already been. And regarding the overall emotional tone of this map, the developers just did not miss. I think one of the things that Treyarch games have really lacked up until around Black Ops 4 and the Cold War Zombies era were intricate systems that interconnected via gameplay so that the player had an endless option of things to do. Not only were these systems created all throughout Infinite Warfare Zombies lifecycle, which will be the final video in this series along with, Director's Cut, Mephistopheles, all that stuff, they were all optional and primarily free. Spaceland had the most of these systems inside the map compared to any of the others that came after it, and perhaps held that crown until Black Ops Cold War with the crafting table and the salvage system and all that stuff. And while things like weapon variants, daily challenges, etc. were added later, back in 2016, this stuff wasn't as important as it is now, nor was it as important as having stuff to do inside of the map itself. And while this map shines with its challenge, depth, and the range of things to do, I do think that they almost revealed all of their tricks too soon and even over-cluttered the map to a certain degree with all of the features that they added. So let's break that down for just a second. Let's go over all of those systems really quick. There is the souvenir machine and the token system, which would require the player to collect and learn a variety of combinations that you could place inside of these machines, and they would reward you with one of many of the equipable traps that you could use at your own leisure. There was the ticket system, which was an entire separate currency system that allowed the player to purchase things from inside of the gift shop, which was located in the arcade. You could earn these tickets from zombies or by playing arcade games or going on the roller coaster, or you could use Neil, which we will get into in just a second, and the items that you could purchase ranged from ammo fills to cryo-freeze weapons, not to mention all of the weapon carts around the map that had these like special tactical gear items inside of them. Then there were 5 traditional traps in each of the areas outside of spawn. There is the alligator mouth in the go-kart area, which acts as like a danger area for players and zombies. And then, like I said a second ago, there was the Neil robot challenge system, which allowed players to just kill zombies and earn tickets as they wanted to. And every 5 challenges, you would have to find a new part to like build him and upgrade him to get more challenges and more tickets or more rewards. There were 4 standard wonder weapons, which were all semi-involved in having to build. Zombies were able to drop grenades, backpacks full of ammo, and power-ups, as well as like other parts for the wonder weapons to upgrade. There was the Acquisicore system, which this is a little confusing, but there were these little fire crystals that you could add to your weapon that would give you elemental damage, and you use these in order to get the wonder weapon, but you could also create like a sub-wonder weapon with your own gun. There's the Fate and Fortune card system, which is similar to Gobblegum's. The Lost and Found system, which is, in my opinion, the dumbest system known to man, where you have to retrieve your stuff every time you go down. There's the Afterlife arcade, which is semi-interesting, but you need to like get tokens by playing in this ghostly heaven arcade, and this helps you respawn. Then there's Ghost and Skulls, which is the second main Easter egg in the map that allows you to get a perkaholic, and last but not least, the entire Easter egg itself. It's a lot, and I know what you're thinking. How is this man complaining about too much content? And I'm definitely not complaining about that. I think that the fact Infinity Ward made this work as well as it did is pretty damn amazing, and it's a pretty high achievement in my opinion. These systems are deep and truly, truly wonderful, and I commend the devs big time, especially Lee Ross, for creating such a great gameplay loop and having such variety inside of it. Now, people love to complain about the lack of replayability inside of Zombies, but Spaceland, it never lacked that. Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say something that I don't think a lot of people include in reviews about older maps, but when this map came out, I had just gotten back into Zombies during BO3, and my passion allowed me to look over a lot of the issues that I now have with this map, and I think one of them is just how overbearing it is to learn all of these different systems. One of my bigger problems with Zombies is not being able to speed through the map after completing it multiple times, and while this problem does become alleviated at the end of IW's life cycle with Director's Cut, obviously, if we are strictly speaking about just bare bones Spaceland, launch map Spaceland, well, the fact that every single time I have to go through the same motions, the same slow, methodical, grueling pacing of getting set up, which is quite slow, and we will talk about that in a second, while also integrating the 10 plus or so systems just to do an Easter egg or upgrade a wonder weapon, it's a lot, man. Before I jump into the main quest, I want to say one thing. I fucking hate the layout of Spaceland. I think it's clunky. I think it's too big. There's no good traversal. Everything is so far away from you at any given moment. It just always seems like I'm at the wrong place at the wrong time, and boy, is it frustrating. And what makes this even more annoying is that there are elements that would make for great traversal, like the slide system, the ledge next to the water ride, the fountains, the teleporters, the whole entire basement section that links each area to one another. But here's the thing. In my opinion, yes, this is my opinion, most of these are unidirectional, and while you can make that argument about a map like Dreisendracht, the way DE has its Wonder Spheres set up is so that you can come and go as you please and always land in close proximity of another launch pad, basically creating like a cycle or a loop of traversal. And in this map, it just feels like they threw their travel design in at the last minute, and it really impedes my ability to enjoy the map, as it really does start out quite slow. Now, I think that this main quest is one of the things that Lee Ross and his team got absolutely correct. It's very simple, but it's surrounded by those complex systems that I mentioned before, and if you want to be prepared for it, well, you got to learn and implement those mechanics in order to complete this egg, which is why making the quest simple was, in my opinion, again, this is an opinion piece, it was the only option. Collecting 3 pieces, building the SETICOM, defending it 3 times, placing down the speakers to play Simon Says, and then blammo, you're in the boss fight. I think if there was more to this quest, it would have ruined the map entirely for me. But like I said, Infinity Ward nailed it, and the only only real issue with this Easter egg is the pacing and its lack of diversity regarding playstyle. There are really only so many weapons you can use, or perks you can buy, or fate and fortune cards you can bring if you want to have any type of success. Unless you're just a masochist and you want to challenge yourself, well, that's a different story altogether. And although there are not many avenues to complete this Easter egg, Spaceland rewards the player for their knowledge of the map. The more you know about how all the systems interconnect with one another, the more successful you will be. My problem is there are just a lot of them, and if you're not playing this map over and over every couple of weeks, well, then you just tend to forget things, as there are dozens and dozens of zombies maps to choose from in 2022. This isn't to say that there are no flaws with this egg, as like I just said, the pacing of the egg is quite slow, and performing all of the tedious tasks in order to move forward is quite frustrating, especially at the rate of zombies spawning in on the map. It is just a nightmare. The early game of Spaceland is just not enjoyable, and you are incredibly weak at the beginning, like almost weaker than normal, it feels like. Getting Juggernog, or Tough Enough as it's called in Infinite Warfare Zombies, it's just not enough, and you need to be fully packed and fully perked just to feel safe on this map, as the curve of player defense and offense is a lot more exponential rather than linear. And a few minor things about this map that I do not think are best from a design standpoint. While I understand and appreciate the direction, when it comes to the longevity of the map without director's cut, I just can't help but disagree with some of the choices that they made. The double pack-a-punch is locked behind beating the boss, and so is being able to get a perkaholic, and since this map is already so difficult, not having access to some of these features without completing the main element of a zombies map is a bit frustrating. And even getting a perkaholic is very, very challenging, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but it turns your standard 1.5 hour zombies match into somewhere between 2.5 to 4 hours per game. And going through this Easter egg, beating the boss, completing the Ghost and Skull steps, and then jumping in the actual arcade machine, like I've said before, it's just a lot. And I hope you're going for high rounds to make that perkaholic worth it, because you've just invested a lot of your time. Now, I understand what the devs were doing here, having the player be rewarded with more power for doing something challenging, and I think that's a great way to look at zombies. I think it's a great way to look at gaming in general. This is actually something I complain about quite a bit inside of Treyarch Zombies maps. And while Infinity Ward really went the extra mile to ensure that there was always a way to catch the carrot on the stick, the fact that we had to walk through fire every single time to get there is just overtly tedious, to say the least. The boss fight itself is probably the best part about Spaceland. Going through the challenging Simon Says step, getting raided by those clowns, only to realize that there is an alien flying around the place, it's just absolute insanity, and I love it. 10 out of 10 from me. If you have never completed this Easter egg or the boss fight, I do recommend giving it a go, as the mechanics of this boss are just top notch. And the alien he teleports around the map, and he can shoot you with this attack that slows you down, which causes you to get stuck and nearly down by zombies. And this tension, it's palpable. And I love how Infinity Ward thought ahead with this fight and said, how can we use the zombies and the map as a boss mechanic? And it executed that very well, with making you get stuck and having to hope that you have enough space between you and the zombies trying to swipe you down. It does take a while to lower the health of the alien, and ammo is pretty scarce, especially if you're used to how modern zombies works. But if you're just patient, you take a breath, and you strike appropriately, you will find yourself succeeding. Now, this is where the player is rewarded with the alien fuses after they obviously defeat the alien, and then you can place those in the pack-a-punch machine for double pack-a-punch. You can also upgrade your wonder weapons finally, which is a welcome feature if you ask me. But the boss fight is not over. Yes, you heard me correctly. Once you defeat the alien, you have to take down his ship by shooting these blue panels on the Spaceland entryway, lining up the ship above the pack-a-punch teleporter for a beam to blow him up, and the ship just goes tumbling down into oblivion. It's very, very satisfying, and while it isn't as hard as the main fight, it's still challenging because it's not as obvious on what to do. But after the ship is destroyed, you will acquire the soul key, bringing you that much closer to completing the super Easter egg that ties all of these maps together. One of the things that I was reminded about playing Zombies in Spaceland was just how challenging zombies used to be, and I miss that level of difficulty. Sure, things are different now, and that's fine, but the level of challenge, discovery, and replayability has truly been lost when it comes to the newer maps and the overall direction of zombies as of 2022. Now, while I'm fully aware of liking zombies to be more difficult and having tons of in-game reward systems, I understand that it's not everybody's cup of tea, and it felt like Lee Ross and his team had released all of their tricks on the first go-round rather than bringing about a big brand new feature unique to each map throughout the DLC season. And at the time of Spaceland's launch, it really did feel rich with content and in my opinion held its own while we waited for DLC 1, aka Rave in the Redwoods. But after coming back to this map 3 or 4 years later, I'm essentially picking it up for the first time again, and there's a steep hill to climb to learn all of these systems and more importantly implement them in a way to beat the map. And after Cold War's life cycle and playing zombies for a long time, it just didn't feel like it was as worth my time as it used to be. And this is quite conflicting for me because at the start of Cold War Zombies life cycle, I was pretty adverse to the simplicity of the Easter egg quests and the easy to get to high rounds. But then after playing maps like Spaceland and Blood of the Dead, I can kind of understand why Treyarch has been making things more accessible to the average player. But I do think we need to find middle ground rather than swing from one side of the pendulum to the other. Yes, I don't enjoy Spaceland as much as I did back in 2016, and yes, it is very, very difficult, but most of all, it's one of the most rewarding maps you can play, and at its core, it has many great ideas and features, but the way they were implemented and interconnected is where my problems mostly lie, and I don't want to come back to this map and play it over and over again. It just doesn't really have that pull for me. And while I don't want zombies maps to hold the player's hand, I certainly don't want them to be so alienating that nobody can enjoy them at all. But I am just one man on the internet sharing his opinion. What do you think about the map? Do you enjoy Zombies in Spaceland? Have you even played it before? Do you hate the map? Do you think it's over or underrated? What about the level of difficulty? Do you think my take is just completely off the rails bad? Let me know with your thoughts down below, and don't forget to like the video or dislike it if you didn't like it, and subscribe for more content just like this. But thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.